So this is the Malena framework. It's a framework that will bring event-driven architecture to the SFML framework. So I'm just going to briefly go over how this framework works. And I'm going to start by just kind of showing you what's going on in our basic example file. So first I'd like to just go and take a look at our header. So in our header, we're creating some elements that we want for our application. In this case, I have about 6-7 boxes just to demonstrate how events work and how we're able to position things and make calls using Lambda functions. So let's take a look at our basic example CPP file. First of all, in our constructor, we are going to make ourselves a child of application. So when we call our application constructor, we want to pass in the video mode so that we have the size of the string. The size of the screen. We also pass in the string, which is going to be the name that shows in that window. And then this is something that's coming soon. This is for the model view controller. So honestly, right now, there's not a big use for it. But it is kind of working as our controller, but this is a work in progress. But when you create a new application, there's going to be two functions that you have to implement, and that's going to be this initialization and also register events. So initialization is actually where we're going to go and initialize all our variables. That means, give them sizes, give them colors, position them, get them ready to go. So here you can see there's a bunch of different blocks of code that's initializing our variables. So what we're going to have is two main boxes. And I can actually just kind of show you what this really ugly app looks like right now. This is just for demonstration purposes. So we have these two boxes, right? The red and green box. Red is box 1, green is box 2. And so here's the code to get them set up, right? So you can see that box 1 has a size of 300 by 200. It has a fill color. These are all SFML functionality. So if you need any more information about how to set sizes for rectangles or any other shapes in SFML, definitely visit the SFML documentation. So here we're creating a couple of boxes. We also have this My Event button. This event button here is I'm going to just show you how you can actually create your own events rather than just using the ones that the systems provide. Here we have our unsubscribe button. That's actually this button here, the unsubscribe button. We have our subscribe button. That's going to be this button here. And then we have a unsubscribe all. That's going to be this gray button. And then a clear all. That's going to be this purple button. All right, so here I'm getting them all set up. I do want to just kind of focus on some of the positioning features, right? This is a new feature that Malena brings. You actually can start positioning components based off of other components. For example, here I have a box dot bottom unsubscribe button. Probably can come up with a better name for that, but for right now, that's the name. And what this actually does is this tells the box to place the unsubscribe button below it, right? So you can see here, this unsubscribe button is actually below this box 1. And then this 20 here is just going to give it how much space, right? If we didn't have anything, if we didn't have a value or a parameter, then it would just place the box right up against the other box. So we have a bunch of position functions. You actually are going to have bottom, top, left, and right. So they're all going to work as you would think, right? If you call left, it's going to place the item to the left of the other item. Here we have here I have this is an item called typer. This is actually an object that allows you to type data into the program, and it will collect that data, and you can also draw that data, right? So you can kind of think of it as being like a text editor or something, right? Where you actually type and you see text. So here we're turning it on, right? So when it's turned on, that means that it's actually going to collect the text. If it was not enabled, then it would mean that it's not going to not going to accept text. Here I'm saying hide it because I'm actually not going to use it to draw. I'm actually just going to use it to be able to collect the data. And then once we have all of our objects set up, we add all of those objects to our app by calling the add component function. And actually, the order of this really doesn't matter. You could call all the add components at the very top, and you can still modify the data in it, and it will still not be a problem. So now let's talk about our register events function, right? So our register events, this is where we're actually going to do all of our event handling. Well, our event listeners and event handling, right? So we're going to use some preset event listeners, which we have quite a few. So I'll come over to our messenger app, right? So these are all the different type of preset events that comes right out of the box, right? So you can say, what do I do when I'm clicked on? How do I update myself? What do I do when I'm hovered? What do I do when I'm not unhovered? What do I do when some text is entered? What do I do when a key is pressed, right? So these are all the built-in events that can occur. But you're not just limited to those because you also can create your own events, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So let's go back to our code. Right, so here you can see that we're saying unfocus. When we're unfocused, I'm saying to execute this function f, right? Well, execute what this function f returns, right? If you notice, this function f is a function that actually returns a function, right? So when I actually call this function, I'm actually returning this function, right? So this inner function is going to be what gets executed. This is not the only way that you can pass Lambda functions. As we'll see later, you can actually write the functions directly in the parameter. But this is just something that I wanted to show you, and also something that I'm doing because, as you can see, I'm using that same code 4 times. So let me just kind of explain what's happening. So I'm saying unfocus, call this function here, and this function here is basically saying set the string of the box to set the string of the box to the text that was passed to it, right? So in this case, I'm going to say set the string of box 1 to the text that was passed here. And then I'm telling my typer to respond and to reset. And you'll see why I'm doing that in just a second. And so again, I'm calling that same exact function on the blur and the focus. I'm just having it update different strings. Right, so basically what that means is when this box is focused, then it's going to show this string in the box. When the box is unfocused or when it's blurred, it's going to show this string, right? And so I have that for both of these boxes, right? So I'm just going to demonstrate that now, right? So right now you see nothing on the box because we haven't done anything. But as soon as I click on the box, you see that it says, oh, it's focused. That means that this is the main focus thing. If I click on the next box, that means that now the yellow box is what's focused, or the green box, right? If I click nowhere on the screen, you can see that they're both blurred, meaning that none of them are focused, right? So right now it will auto detect when something goes into focus and when something goes out of focus, and you can actually tell the program to execute some function when that occurs, right? And that actually only occurs once. As soon as the box goes on focus, it will execute whatever function you pass to it. All right, so let's go down to our typer. So remember I said the typer is what actually collects data that you type in. So here I'm basically saying, hey, whenever I press a key, I want you to go and get whatever value was typed inside of this typer and apply that string to either one of these boxes, right? And I'm making sure, well, to determine which box it applies to, we're going to check one of the states, right? So all of our components have these states that you can check. So I'm basically saying if my box is in a focus state, then when I type, I want that whatever I type to go into the text of my box. So I have that for both boxes. And so I'll demonstrate that, right? So right now I'm typing And as you can see, nothing is typing, and that's because neither of the boxes are focused. But as soon as I focus on one, right, as you can see, it says box 1 is now focused. Try typing. I can say, hi, I am box 1, and you can see that it actually updates the box. All right, if I go to box 2, you'll see that, hi, I am box 2, that it actually changes there. And that's because that's just what I said I wanted to happen whenever I press a key. Right, and now the way I determine that is by passing in this lambda function. All right, so let's go and keep going down. So right now, here's an unhover. This is also a function that comes right out of the box. The system is already set up to put any any component into a hover state if the mouse goes over it. There's nothing that you actually need to do. The system automatically does that. So as soon as I hover over something, it's going to execute my unhover function. And so in this case, I'm basically telling whenever you hover over me, change the color of the box to yellow. And that's why you can see as soon as I hover over this green box, it turns yellow. But as you notice, it doesn't say to turn it back to green, right? That's going to be another event. That's going to be an event when we unhover, right? Most of the times we use mouse in or mouse out, but I called it unhover, right? So when I unhover, then I need to tell it what to do. And in this case, I'm saying when you unhover, change back to green. All right, and so now as you can see, my hover function is working. All right, so let's scroll down. Here's my unupdate. Now this is actually a function that doesn't require an event to occur, or excuse me, it doesn't require input in order to happen. This unupdate function gets executed every time the window refreshes. So every loop, this unupdate function is going to call, right? So I'm basically saying, what do I want my component to do every time the window refreshes? In this case, I wanted to check the state. I wanted to see if I am hovered. Well, actually, it's checking to see if box 1 is hovered. And then it says if box 1 is hovered, then change the My Events button to magenta. Otherwise, change the My Event button back to blue. Right? And if you notice, box 2 is the one that's actually triggering that, even though it doesn't even affect box 2 at all. Right? So as you can see, other components can trigger events that will affect components that are not itself. So as you can see right now, when I hover over box 1, you can see that it changed my event button to magenta. And as soon as I unhovered from box 1, it changes it back to blue. Right? That's because box 2 is telling it to do that every time the window refreshes. All right, so now let's scroll down to my event. Right? So this is an example of how you can actually subscribe to events that you create yourself. So in this case, I created this function called my event, and basically what this my event does is whenever it's going to set the string of box 1 to my event was fired, right? And so box 1 subscribes to that. So basically, it's saying, hey, whenever a my event is triggered, execute this my event function, which basically says change my text to my event was fired. So now I'm going to go back to let's go back to our code and let's see this work. Right, so here I put a click event on the unsubscribe button. Yeah, I think that's where we were, sorry. So here I have an unclick on my unsubscribe button. Unsubscribe basically says, hey, whenever you click on this button, unsubscribe from my event, which means that no longer change the text to my event. All right, so let's just show how the my event works actually. So right now when I click on box 1, right, well, it says box 1 subscribe to my event. So that basically says change my event to it was fired. And then we have, actually I should go down here for a second. Then we have our My Event button actually trigger the event, right? So whenever we create our own event, we also have to publish that event. Otherwise, that event will never occur. So we actually have to write somewhere in our code to say, hey, the event is occurring now. And so in this code right here, I'm basically saying if I ever click on this My Event button, then I want to trigger the My event, which will then it will then apply the event to anything that subscribed to it. And not necessarily anything, right? It's going to be anything that passed this test, right? So what ends up happening is when you publish an event, the system is going to go and test everything that has subscribed to this event, and it's going to test it against this function. And if this function tests true, then it will then apply the event that that object has published or subscribed to. So in this case, right now, I'm basically saying if box 1 isn't hidden, then go ahead and trigger the event that it passed, right, which is this My Event. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and press this button, and as you can see, it says My Event was fired, right? That was a user-defined event and not just something that came from the system. Right, so now let's go to our unsubscribed, right? So here I was able to subscribe to my own event. I can also unsubscribe to events, and it doesn't have to be my own event. You can also unsubscribe to some of the system events as well. But in this case, we're going to demonstrate unsubscribing to the My Event. So as you recall, right, when I click on the button, it fires the My Event, which shows here. I have this unsubscribe button, which basically says, hey, if you click on this unsubscribe button, remove that event, right? Unsubscribe box 1 to the My Event. So if I were to click on unsubscribe My Event, then what you'll see is, well, it showed that it was blurred because it was once focused. So it's by default it's saying, hey, when you go out of focus, change the text to blurred. But now you're going to see when I click on this button, it no longer changes it to My Event was fired because I disabled that event, right? And just to show you that that's actually what's happening, I created another subscribe to the event, which means that I can subscribe back to that My Event and everything will be fine. So if I click this subscribe My Event, then I can go back and you can see that firing event is actually now working again, right? So we actually can make our own events, which is a good thing. So we're not limited. There's also a way that you can subscribe from everything, right? So if you notice, my box 1 has a few events on it. It has the blur, right? So when I focus on blur, it also has a trigger event, right? So there's a couple events on there. I can say unsubscribe all, and if I say unsubscribe all, then it's gonna no longer do any of the events for box 1. So here I go, unsubscribe all, right? So you can see it says box 1 is blurred, but now if I click on it, it doesn't say it's focused. If I trigger, it doesn't change it to My Event. It's actually just done, right? But I could go and add My Event back, and we'll see that My Event is back. So that would be what the unsubscribe all does. There's also a clear all. Clear all is basically going to say wipe out all the events, right? So right now you can see that this hover is still active, focus and blur is still active, but as soon as I say clear all, now nothing is active, right? Now it's just kind of stale. So that is an overview of what the Malena framework can do. I hope you enjoy.